Hello, I'm Paula Guthett, co-founder and programmer at Cinema Detroit, an independent nonprofit art house cinema in Greater Downtown. Welcome to our discussion of Toni Morrison, The Pieces I Am. When we were screening this film, it's almost exactly a year ago, there were a lot more people in this space watching the film, talking about it, and getting inspired by what they saw. So we're really happy to be involved in this discussion tonight. As you might have guessed, Cinema Detroit is still closed. We've been closed since March 16th, but I am still programming films for virtual Cinema Detroit. And that is a page on our site, cinemadetroit.org// virtual-cinema, where you can see some of the films I've picked out. And if you watch one of the films that's linked there, part of your ticket cost comes back to us. The Pieces I Am is still available along with other features. There's a shorts program, and then we have two new films starting this Friday, June 26th. One is the documentary Ella Fitzgerald, Just One of Those Things, and the other is a narrative feature, Viva, which is a gender-bending musical romance. On our site, you can also make a tax-deductible donation, find out about memberships and gift cards for when we reopen, and even see a list of our past films. So if you wanted to check any of that out, it's all at cinemadetroit.org. Now let's get started with our panelists. I'm really excited to introduce you to them. Janet Webster Jones is the daughter of a librarian and a retired educator from the Detroit Public Schools, where she had a 40-year career. She has been selling books since 1989. She began while teaching a class about an Egyptian study tour she had taken. An attendee noticed Janet regularly brought in books about ancient African history to share with the class and suggested that she sell her books at a church Christmas bazaar. Along with other serendipitous experiences, a business emerged, and she found herself taking books to events and selling them to attendees, what we today might call a pop-up. Janet opened her first brick and mortar store, Source Booksellers, inside the Spiral Collective, a shared space with 3 other women-owned African-American businesses on Cass Avenue and Willis Street in Detroit's Midtown in 2002. The bookstore moved in 2013 to its current home right across the street in the Auburn building at 4240 Cass Avenue, Suite 105. So she is our neighbor over on Cass. Welcome, Janet. Writer and visual artist Zuri McWhorter is a well-rounded as a writer, work appearing in independent and scholarly publications. Her short stories, poetry, journalism, and screenplays grace pages around the world. Her art is observational. She says it is exactly what you're thinking, but not keen on saying. It is an odd connection, but you accept it. Zuri was born, raised, and educated in the city of Detroit. Her influences include a summer abroad in Ireland with Michigan State University and playing the cello across Western Europe in high school. She is a 2010 alumna of Interlochen Motion Picture Arts, and she has self-published twice and founded Just Milieu, a literature and art zine in 2017. I hope I said that right. In the same year, she started screenwriting and film consulting and art direction full-time. Tawana Honeycomb Petty is a mother, social justice organizer, youth advocate, poet, and author. She is intricately involved in water rights advocacy, data and digital privacy education, and racial justice and equity work. She is the director of Data Justice Program for the Detroit Community Technology Project and co-leads Our Data Bodies, a 5-person team concerned with the ways our community's digital information is collected, stored, and shared by government and corporations. She is a non-resident fellow at the Digital Civil Society Lab at Stanford PAX, a convening member of the Detroit Digital Justice Coalition, a co-founder of Riverwise Magazine, a racial equity facilitator with Detroit Equity Action Lab, and the organizer of an annual art festival and artist retreat in historic Idlewild, Michigan, which convenes over 30 artists, organizers, herbalists, and innovators each year to create art, share healing practices, and re-spirit each other and hundreds of community members. Tawana is the recipient of several awards, including the Spirit of Detroit Award, the Women of Substance Award, Women Creating Caring Communities Award, Detroit Awesome Award, U of M Black Law Students Association's Justice Honoree Award, and she was recognized as one of Who's Who in Black Detroit in 2013 and 2015. She has also received the Wayne State University Center for Peace and Conflict Studies Peacemaker Award and a Certificate of Special Congressional Recognition in 2018. Thank you all for being with us today and giving us your time, wisdom, and perspective, because this is about the written word and lyricism and poeticism and all of that. I've asked Tawana to start us with a poem.
Thank you. We were supposed to turn our backs on you, count down to your imminent demise, dangle you by the limbs of misdeeds. They wanted us to rate you inferior. Plagued by deteriorating neighborhoods and a convoluted history, you were never supposed to bloom from your ashes. A lot like you have been discarded like debris, deemed useless to naysayers and convictors. Yet you keep rising, clinging to vitality. You refuse to allow statistics to dictate your destiny, and the media will channel your journey. And though some shall remain loyal, others will mock your tribulations. You were combing a young into maturity. Both your gift and your curse, imported from adversity. You've seen better decades, yet you thrive during the worst of them. Your best days have yet to arrive, and though some won't stick around to witness your climb or rejoice in your restoration, your destination is inevitable. You've been on the bottom much longer than most, and the bridges you'll journey won't be easy to coast, but you will make it and bring warriors with you, armed with devotion. They will defend your dignity and honor your namesake. You are Detroit, the road to progression, the mirror image of endurance, and you hold the key to taking back our humanity.
Thank you. Thank you, Tawana.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So my first question is, you all have seen the movie. Did you watch it when it came out a year ago?
I did, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so have you rewatched it since?
Yep.
Yes.
Only 3 more times.
Yeah, I've seen it 3 times.
Right? I've seen it like 4 times myself. How has your impression of it changed, if at all, between then and now?
Woo.
See any of it differently?
It is you know, for this moment, this particular moment, this global cry in defense of Black lives, this movie, Toni Morrison, it is almost like she is the torch bearer, the moment, like the person that is guiding us through this moment. I feel so super connected to her as an ancestor right now, and I feel really truly guided by her courage. She was a courageous woman, and you know, and I'm looking at Zuri and I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, the courage to self-publish, the courage to put your literature out there in the world and not worry whether or not it's going to be picked up, and just know that the world needs to hear your words. And so I just feel very connected to her in this moment as being a self-published author myself.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I'm feeling about it. Like, I'm real raw. Yeah.
Since I watched it again last night, and I think that I looked at it a little differently because I was looking at each decade. Like, in every decade of Toni Morrison's life, she was involved in whatever she needed to be involved in, the civil rights movement. And then when she was older and she started publishing other people's work, like, just at every stage in her womanness and her career, it seemed like she was always the matriarch of making stuff happen. And right. I just love seeing, like, how when she was young and she was at Howard and she was like, I was just having fun. And then she met all these people, and she knew that she just wanted to write and have her words out there. And that's why I published. That's why I self-published, exactly how Tawana said. Like, it didn't matter to me who was reading it. Just somebody was going to read it and somebody was going to feel something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I looked at the movie when it first came out, and I did it again in preparation for this evening. And I really saw it as a piece of art that was a documentary creation and biography and memoir done with the technology of the screen and the um, use of people who had been touched and touched her life. Um, I think Toni Morrison is a pivotal figure in the literary world of Black people, and of course now they say of the whole world. But she's a pivotal figure, but she truly drew her inspirations from her life experience and from her ancestors and from her experiences that they had. And she made it cool to be Black
Yes.
at that time.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean we haven't had other times when it was cool to be Black, but certainly at
Right.
that time she did. And we were speaking earlier about how did she do it? Well, all of us have multiple capacities and capabilities. And I think it depends on how a person chooses to organize. She made a list in the film. She wrote down one day all the things she did, and then she came out with only two that she had to do.
Mm.
One was to mother, and the other was to write.
Yep.
So I think with that kind of an organizational mind, you're not distracted by a lot of the narratives that come to you that you think you have to respond to. And I think that's a big lesson for all of us today, that we get so hooked into somebody else's story or narrative or desire for a story from us that we oftentimes lose sight of the mission that we are on. So I enjoyed hearing her like that.
Oh, shit.
I sort of envied her focus, and I'm going to try to work on, I might not be able to focus on just two things, but maybe, four things, or trying to narrow it down, and not getting caught up like in social media so much, all that stuff.
Yeah, and you could see that she was having a lot of fun. Her life was full of fun. There were pictures of her partying, and at every stage of her life, she had all these friends. She was having all these great conversations with people. And it's like, if you can do that and you can focus on what you need to focus on, it seems like she did it effortlessly, and it wasn't hard at all. Like, it was just what she was made to do, and she did it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
I was reminded at the time that when I was looking at it, something that I had recently heard on a program about the brain. And the people were saying that the brain wants you to work it. And if we are responding to everything through our emotional selves, we don't give the brain a chance to work. And I think she's a great example of how she used her brain. I think you remember her saying that she was real smart in the morning.
Yes.
She said not so much in the evening.
Right.
But she knew herself.
That's right.
And
exactly.
That's really the only work we have to do on this planet, is to know ourselves.
Ooh.
And I think she's a wonderful example of that.
Yes.
Oh, so we have a comment came through from Facebook. My favorite book by Toni Morrison is Tar Baby, great read. I'm going to just throw this out there. Then how did you come to Toni Morrison's work, and what is your favorite work of hers? Let's start with Janet.
Okay. Well, I don't use the word favorites very much because I'm very changeable. And I think that for me, Toni Morrison was a intergenerational and multilateral writer. She wrote a lot of novel, and I remember hearing her say that so much truth is found in the novel form because it's really the work of the interior of the human mind and how that mind works. I'm a bookseller, and so we sell nonfiction books. And the joy for me of Toni was that she wrote nonfiction. So some of the wonderful work she wrote toward the end of her life was nonfiction. So she wrote a book called The Origin of Others, which is a book that she was put into a book of some lectures she did at Yale University, looking at how we came to understand those other people as others, those other humans as others. So she does a wonderful treatise on that. And then her book, which is a group of essays called In Search of Our Self-Respect. In Search of Our Self-Regard, and she's done a lovely group of essays there. One in particular has been said that even though she was writing a eulogy about James Baldwin, she was also talking about herself in that one. So that's a beautiful, beautiful book of essays on many subjects. She talks about feminism in there. And then the other one that's coming out now, I'm not sure it's all the way out. I have it here. If I turn it up, it might not show right. But anyway, this does. Look at that.
Bodily evidence.
Yeah. It's called Bodily Evidence. The subtitle is Racism, Slavery, and the Maternal Power in the Novels of Toni Morrison.
Ooh.
And it's called Bodily Evidence. Interestingly enough, it's published by the University of South Carolina Press.
Wow.
And it's Neva Cobb Moore. So it just came to me to be known, and we will get it at the store. But I thought, what a wonderful tribute, especially at this time when we're finding so many women participating in these difficult questions, answering these difficult questions about race, about power, about male domination, white superiority, health, education, all of that. And women are speaking today. And so Toni's work of speaking about the power of women, the bodily evidence in the novels that she wrote was there. So I really appreciate her so much. The other thing I would say about Toni, too, is that she very wisely and carefully used the term the white gaze. She didn't give in to that.
Yes.
She wasn't writing to be gazed upon by white people.
Yeah.
Oh, that was quite courageous of her during that time. But she was absolutely real at it. It wasn't something that she made up. That's what she was. She didn't go for that.
Yeah.
So I've said enough. You guys go.
No, I love listening to you talk. So.
Yeah.
I wasn't introduced to Toni until under a decade ago. You would think I've been a poet since I was 7 years old. I've been writing since I was 7 years old. And it wasn't taught to me in school. I didn't learn it in school. And so I got introduced to all of her work. Well, not all of her work, a lot of her work about a decade ago. And the first book that I was introduced to was Song of Solomon. And I felt it was very poetic. And I think I connected with it because of the Michigan connection. At that time, I didn't have a particular level of consciousness when I was reading through. I was new into like social justice and interrogating like the race questions and how we deal with like familial strife, and those sorts of things. And so like that was the book that that first drew me into her work. And I thought that she was a brilliant poetic writer. And then I just went down a rabbit hole of watching everything under the sun, any interview she ever did. and like I said, her courage was it really just filled me up, it made me proud to be a Black woman and made me comfortable to write from a Black perspective and not worry about being seen as a Black writer, and to find pride in that, especially coming out of Detroit, where you could grow up and be taught that you're supposed to do the opposite. You're not supposed to have pride in being Black. You're not supposed to have pride in being in a Black city and being a Black woman. And she just really modeled how you could do that. And I really appreciate her and her work for that.
Well, one of the things you said, Tawana, was that you didn't get it in school. But I do have to stick up a little bit for Detroit Public Schools during the 40 years that I was there. I was not part of this effort, but the Department of Language Arts and Literature created a textbook called the African American Literature. And the person who was in charge of that department at the time beat down the doors of Harcourt, Brace, and Yovanovitch at that time, the publishing company. And at that moment, African American Man was one of the vice presidents. And he took it up and published this book. And Detroit schools, teachers, and people who were associated with the language arts and literature part of the district wrote this beautiful book. And Toni was in there. I had many people at that time. I went around as an administrator and consultant and stuff. But but the people that were in that book is wonderful. If you can find those now, there were 2 books. One was green, one was brown. And you could hardly find them now, but Detroit helped the world
Yes.
with the knowledge. Now, whether you got that or not, I don't know, because every 9th grade student got a copy of that.
No.
And what was it called, Janet?
It's called the African American Literature book. And it was published by Harcourt, Brace, and Yovanovitch at that time. They're Harcourt something now. And
I wonder if
it was
issue it.
Well, that would be a good thing to ask about. I have copies in my vault. Don't ask me for them.
I was about to ask you for them.
But it was art and literature, so they would have things in the book put together, literature with the art of Black people in those books. And
I mean, it definitely sounds familiar. I know I was introduced to Langston Hughes very, very early.
Yeah, you might have gotten one. But at the time, not all people are able to receive things like that. Sometimes you have to have some life experience in order to really. Yeah, and I have to say, I had a teacher at one of the high schools at that time who was Irish in background, and she held on to her pain and suffering of her Irish history. And she taught that book like there was no tomorrow. She said, I don't understand why everybody isn't teaching this book. So you just don't know where it's going to come from and how it's going to be received and used. So don't I talk too much. You guys need to talk.
No, I was going to bring up about how, when I was introduced to Toni Morrison when I was basically a baby. My mom's a teacher. She worked at a few different DPS schools, but she was a kindergarten teacher. But she was a very avid reader. We had giant bookshelves. And I remember sitting on the floor and kind of trying to pronounce different writers' names. And Toni Morrison was always there, and I thought she was a guy until I looked at it. And I remember she was next to Tanana Rivdu. And I was just, seeing all these names and seeing the pictures of these people and not really understanding what's inside these books because I was so young. And then eventually, when I got to high school, I was lucky enough to get to read Toni Morrison. The first book was Song of Solomon. Wild in the 10th grade. And I was being taught by a Black man teacher, Mr. Small, and we were working on that book. It feels like it was a whole semester, but it took a while because you're trying to get these things and this language to these kids who are rebellious by nature because we're teenagers, who are trying to be cool and not read. And it was just a conflict of interest. And even I was susceptible to that because I tried to read them I don't get it, whatever, I'm gonna leave this alone. And then I was taking a speech class and my other teacher gave me The Bluest Eye. And I was like, okay, I'll do this instead, but that's just as wild. So when I got to the middle, it was a lot. But I do try to read her books every few years because I know that I've changed and that I can absorb the information more clearly. And I noticed that when I started out reading and I didn't know that I was a writer yet, I wouldn't get through a whole Toni Morrison book because I would want to start writing. I'm like, this is so good. I can write something like this. I want to write something like this. I want to have this feeling that she had when she put these words on this paper. But in preparation for this last night, I will say that I picked up The Bluest Eye just to skim through it, and I ended up reading the whole thing. Wow. And that was the first time I had ever sat and read through an entire Toni Morrison book in my life, and it was out of control. I completely understand why people's Toni Morrison books are thrown across the room and all falling apart because it's like you're laughing at it and then you're like, I can't deal with this. And then you go pick it up and you feel really bad about it. Right. And I love all those emotions can come out because even in The Bluest Eye, when you read about how Charlie he went to see his father and he everything just came out when he soiled himself. It's like, that's how it comes out. Everything you're holding in is going to come out at some point. And that's what her books do. They let everything come out. So when you close it and you finish it, you can go about your life knowing that you do feel things and you can control your feelings and control what's around you. And I just love her. I'm so glad to be here. Right. We don't get to talk about this kind of thing.
She says in the film that she didn't call herself a writer
for a long time.
The commercial success of Song of Solomon. It was a commercial success that made her finally say that she was a writer.
Yeah,
right. And that was the third book.
She was a teacher. She was an editor. but she had not a mother who wrote, a teacher who wrote, an editor who wrote. But it wasn't until the commercial success. And I'm not trying to pump up capitalism, but I'm telling you, it makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
And then her editor said, "Go home, quit. You need to write."
Yep.
So
Mhm.
all of that was in the mix of her life as well. She wasn't born fully formed. She became, as Michelle Obama says, she was becoming through that whole, through her whole lifetime, as we all are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope I'm becoming until I'm out of here.
Well, that's
Exactly.
what you do, really.
No,
Nobody gets finished until they're gone.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And then we don't know what happens after that. So.
Mhm.
Right. Everybody's sitting around reading Tony's books. That's what's that's what's on the other side.
Well, the other thing I want to say about Toni Morrison and the comments, I mean, the film, Pieces I Am, is that they had excellent people talking about her and her relationship to her work. Not
Yes.
so much their relationship to her, but the
Mhm.
relationship to her work and the impact it had on the literary field.
Yeah. The June Jordans, the Sonia Sanchez's,
Right, right.
Yes.
you know, all
Well,
yeah.
yeah, all of those people. Paul Giddings. I was trying to remember all of them. I made some notes and I lost my notes. So what?
Yeah. The most powerful part was when they all circled around her and they advocated for her and they said, no, the world is not going to ignore Toni Morrison. And I just thought, you know, and speaking of capitalism, right, how we were just saying, like, we don't want to shout that out, but like the way the system is set up now, it puts so much competition in the field where, you know, you don't always see like everybody coming to the support and the nurturing of this artist that they value, that they've learned and grew so much from. And I like that part almost always makes me cry. And I'm just like, these are superstars going like,
Yes.
this is the artist of our moment, and you give her her just due. And that just warms my heart tremendously, you know.
I like to see that as a norm rather than an exception.
Absolutely.
And I really think it's more of a norm. Look at this group here tonight. We're
That's
circling
right.
around, and you know. So if we just let ourselves not accept what we think somebody is doing, but rather know what we are doing, and I think that's another message that Toni gives us. She broke the bank again when she said people. She understood from people that were in her orbit that there were black books and white books. And she said, "Well, I'm gonna fix it because one would not be a commercial success on both sides." So she said, "Okay, I'm gonna fix that." So she made the black book. You know
That's
that
right.
one? And she
Yeah.
had pictures of all kinds of things in there. We sold it in the store. We don't have it at this moment, but we can get it because was republished by Random House after
So good.
to bring that back into the public. So she said, "Oh, I'll fix that." So she didn't bow into these narratives that didn't fit with her understanding
That's
of
right.
reality. Yeah.
Just letting this all sink in.
It's just all here.
Yeah. And this is kind of a weird thing, but I'm really, you know, like weirdly proud that she grew up in Ohio. Because it's right next door. We're sort of neighbors. In my mind, I'm like, she's from the Midwest. Like, that's so cool.
That's so cool.
I just wonder, like, right, so close. And I just wonder, like, how it might have been different if she was from New York or California or somewhere else. And I'm, you know, glad she wasn't. But I'm going down a tangent.
It's understandable to wonder that.
Well, I think in the movie, I guess you should call it a movie or cinema.
It's a movie.
Okay. We talk about that spot in Ohio, Lorain, Ohio, which is near to Oberlin, which is an extremely progressive literary and musical university. But she wanted to get away from home, so she ran on up to Washington. But that particular spot is really a crossroads, going west and going north. So the likelihood of her being there was very strong with her people leaving Alabama and traveling north. So I think there are no accidents anyway, but that was the place that grew her up.
That's right.
and loved her, and she could look back to where her people came from, and then look forward to where she went to and gained her skills and so on. So I think that was sort of a crucible of development for her in LaGrange, Ohio. They call it Tony's, Ohio.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember too her comment about the melting pot, how she had grown up in a melting pot,
Mhm.
and then how her concept of that changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. She knew that Black culture was a root, that you had to be connected to it if you were really going to understand the world. And I think that for her to assert that kind of confidence, especially in her time, is just tremendous. I mean, it's difficult to assert that confidence now, in a lot of circles. And she entered every space, questioning like white superiority, white supremacy, and questioning how anyone could look at Blackness and not see the power and the beauty that it is. And I just feel like I'm watching this movement across the world wake up to where Toni was so many decades ago. And that's just tremendously powerful. And I hope that everyone who is waking up to a certain level of consciousness right now picks Toni up, if they haven't already, at the very least, starting with this film, and then venturing into her books.
Because I knew Toni Morrison more as through her words on the paper, like this documentary, and like, you know how you go through the rabbit hole of YouTube and you watch all the, and like you can even hear her voice kind of soften over the years. Like when she, like before she grew her hair into the dread and she was doing interviews, like her voice was a little more assertive, it was a little deeper. And then as she got older, and even when you listen to her audiobooks, it's like, you can tell that she's like, I know what I was here to do. I did it. I'm doing it. I'm leaving it here for you. And it's just like that soft exit was just amazing to me. Like the reason I read the whole book last night was because for the first half I was listening to her read it at first, and I was reading along with it, and just to hear her not interpret but kind of give life to these characters with her own voice. Because she was an actress as well. Like we know that she was in plays and all that kind of stuff. And she wrote Howard, the play about Desdemona. And I think that all of these talents that she has, she's so humble about it, but she knows how to use them because she's so smart and so confident. And she got that confidence from reading and learning how to read when other people weren't reading, and working in a library in high school, and then going to Howard and being around intellectuals. It's like there is a place where you want to be academic, but you also want to be passionate and you want to be emotional. And she does all that so well. It's like they're not two different people. They're all of the people. She's all of the people.
Right. Right.
I think it's really good to acknowledge her roots. And we think that she had courage. Well, her mother had a whole lot of courage.
That's right.
The film, because her mother, she said that her mother understood that the white boys were sniffing around her children. See, we have a long history of this in the South and the North. The North was not exceptional in that. And so she needed to get her children out of there. And so that theme is running in Toni's work. So she learned a lot from the actions of her parents and her grandparents and the experiences that they had. So it's sort of easy to say, well, Toni had all this. Well, Toni was drawing on everything she had.
Oh, absolutely. Standing on shoulders.
More to give if she decided to do some more. Just like with this book, The Bodily Evidence, I think that's really quite timely because she really worked with the Black body in all of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just like soaking everything in. I'm just like soaking everything in. Sorry. Like her, when you mentioned her confidence, I remembered in the movie where she went and asked for the raise.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Tough. That's tough even now. You know, that would be, and it was the 70s, and as a Black woman in an all-white office, amazing, just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there was an energy that was going on at that time. Are we talking about the late 70s? When was she? It was in the 70s. So there was energy going around that time. I remember meeting a woman years ago who said that I think the sun is coming in on me. I think where
You're glowing. It's wonderful.
And this woman said to me years ago, she said, the women's movement of today is just an extension, a continuation of the women's movement in the 1920s. In the 1920s, women dropped their bras, they cut their hair, and they raised their skirt, and all that. And she said the Depression came along and stopped, and then the war came along and stopped, and then they ran back to home to have these babies. And in the 60s, they broke out again. So the energy is not something that you turn on and off. It's there. And for people who are able to recognize it, we use it.
That's
and
right.
I think that's what's going on now. I don't think it's surprising that things have happened now which have caused people to just explode with this desire to talk about coming together.
That's right. All over the world.
Yeah. It's a wonderful time. So I think that she was able to use that energy. The part in the film where she talks about the myth that Black people could fly. They could fly and get up out of here, which is what they were doing. And people have written a lot about that myth along the way. But it's energy. It's the energy of the planet, of the natural world, of human beings, of animals, and all that. And so when you're able to use what you are experiencing in that way, composition is available. You can just make stuff up.
Right. That's right. I know I felt like she was flying when we got this film, like right at her transition. It was almost like, it was like, whoa, okay. I hear you.
Yeah,
exactly. I see that.
Yep. Thank you for this gift.
We have to just say thank you to Cinema Detroit because you've been diligent in putting this out, and thank you very. I'm not a big moviegoer because I'm real lazy about that, but I'm so glad that you're in the neighborhood so we can slip over there every now and then and see good films.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's definitely where I saw it first too.
Yeah.
Very kind. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's like I feel the same way as you, Janet. I sometimes don't name favorites because I don't really want to. I do change, and we show a lot of different movies, and in my mind, they're all good. But certain ones that you can tell are special, and they're really landing with the right, not great people, but like with everybody. And that movie definitely grew on us. Like it was, it definitely started out pretty quiet, and then it just built.
Yeah, well, the timing was right.
Yes, it was. And so thank you so much. That means a lot to me. A little verklempt. What I liked too about what she did in her work as an editor was bringing other people along with her, giving them their chance. And I like how they kind of separated it out. Like she like in one division, she was the editor, and then she wrote for the other division. So there wouldn't be any, conflicts or whatever. But by her bringing all those people along, giving them their chance, I thought that's really cool, and it's something that I definitely aspire to do here, by giving the spotlight, to super indies or the films that are lesser known, and so it's something.
You do a tremendous job at that. I mean, I love sitting in Cinema Detroit and seeing a commercial about a local artist or a local farm or or independent film or getting to even talk to the filmmakers of the film, and so so that's a tremendous contribution. And I know like that, one of the inspirations, like the art festival that I do where I bring all these artists together. Like I said, in the past, I always felt like I had to be the center and I was fighting for recognition, you know. And there's something about the Toni Morrisons of the world that encourage you to open up that space for to let that flow and to like bring in these other voices, because you grow from that. You grow from hearing other artists. You grow from reading other artists, you know, and other writers, and just being connected to that energy. It's like a high vibration, to be able to sit and witness the brilliance of other people, you know. And she just
Absolutely.
really modeled that. Yeah.
Definitely an inspirational figure. Definitely. And the other thing that was kind of funny is when, I don't know if you do this, Janet, but Oprah was talking about with her book club, she picked like kind of the books that everyone would expect that everyone would want to read, and then she hit them with Toni Morrison. And I was like, oh, I can't do that here. Like, I'm doing my mainstream stuff, and then I'm gonna hit you with
I think that's
something from Kenya. And
I think that's a good example of how the energy comes together, because who knew about Oprah Winfrey's interaction with her and what she was doing? But Oprah Winfrey really, in the old program called the Sock It To Me. I don't know if you remember the Sock It To Me. Well, she really socked it to the publishing industry at one point. Now, I'm part of the book industry, so so I see a lot of sides. But she really said, "Now wait a minute. They're more than one person can critique a book," and so she really she opened that space up where anybody could talk about a book. So, and it was her book club, and people began to really follow, because she's a deep, avid, long-time reader and has a critical eye. So she just put her finger on another book that's going to be good, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And when she puts her finger on your book, your life is changed.
That's so true.
A wide audience. Wide response. Yeah. So
there was someone that refused it, and I was just like,
that's their choice. That's
right.
It's like, not a good idea. Where do you think someone should start that just saw this movie? Like, what would you tell them to read first?
I always say The Bluest Eye. Start from the beginning. Just do that.
That makes sense.
Makes sense.
And
it's short, it's timely.
Yeah.
Yes.
It always is relevant.
Yeah.
Well, I like to think, people ask me a lot in the store, what should I read? And I always ask them, what are you feeling? Or what are you interested in? And where are you in your life journey? Pick a spot and find a book to match that. And then that will take you to other places. That's one thing that's wonderful about reading. You don't have to be right about anything. I heard a person say, you have to, years ago, you have to read a lot of books to find your truth. And you do. There's so much that's available to us now with this global life that we're living, and really the intense local life that we're living. So I think you have to start where you need to start, where you want to start. And for some, it may be The Bluest Eye. Could be the one on home. And I'm not as astute with many of her novels, simply because I spend my life in the nonfiction world. But there are other places to begin, or really Beloved. That's a hard one, and she just makes you ring almost with the pain of that. So I think people have to start where they are and then get themselves suited to something.
I read Beloved when I was in college, and I think I could have processed it earlier.
Right.
Because I wasn't used to that type of narrative.
Yeah, exactly. It was the same way for me. I knew that
It
I
was
wanted
so
to read, but I couldn't get myself to do it because I knew I wasn't. And I wanted to, like how my mom would just go. She reads so much. Oh my gosh, she reads everything. But I would see her reading Toni Morrison, and I'd be like, I'm not at that phase yet. I can't do that. But then when it was forced upon me, and I rejected it on purpose because that's what teenagers do, I didn't. I wasn't. I think that if I had read The Bluest Eye a little earlier, reading it again would have been a little more palatable. Because it, like last night when I read it, it felt like I was reading it for the first time, even though I knew what was going to happen. I knew everything, I knew the entire plot. But even from just like the literary standpoint, it's pretty experimental. Just like in the work itself, the sentence structure, the little blurbs at the top where it's just all one line, all the words have no spaces. You have to look at that, and then at a certain point, a reader can read that and be like, oh, I know what this is about to be about. But a teenager can't do that. A 10-year-old can't do that. I mean, a lot of people can't do that. So I think that that's where people should. I just personally think that's a good start for Toni Morrison. I do love Beloved. I think that Home might have been my favorite when I got it. It changes. Whatever Toni Morrison book I'm reading, that's going to be my favorite one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Even the nonfiction stuff and the plays, like all of it. It's like, whatever. This is my favorite right now.
Yeah.
Jerry, I'd like to hear you say more about the structure of the books.
Oh, yeah, of course. So, it's not necessary. It's a chapter book. It has chapters, but it's more like it's in seasons, So first of all, it starts off with telling the plot. Like, in the documentary, she says, I told you the plot. And if you want to keep going, you want to know how this happened. You want to know why this happened. And you know what happened, but you got to see. And then, how she'll go from talking in the child's narrative. And it seems like the child is narrating the whole story.
Right.
But then she'll go in and later in the book where she's talking about Pecola's mom, and the entire Pecola's mom thought narrative is in italics, So like she had to differentiate because she wanted the story to continue, but she didn't want to take it out of certain voices. And it's just really interesting to see how her and her editor figured out how to place the book. And even in the documentary, he said, I didn't read the book again until recently. And he doesn't like to read books that he edited because it doesn't feel the same. And I completely understand that from doing my magazine. You don't want to, or even self-publishing. I don't read my books anymore. They're just kind of here.
Yeah.
But when you look at stuff and you see your youthful structure, like how you started to write, like your first pieces, and you think that you've grown out of it, I think that Toni Morrison decided to write it the way that she did so that when people go back, and even when she goes back, she sees that I experimented here. I followed the true academic structure here. I threw in my own little thing here. And then how a lot of her sentences are cut short, how, the paragraphs aren't necessarily short. They can be very long. And and my favorite part is at the end when in The Bluest Eye, when Pecola is talking to her imaginary friend that she made up, right? And there's no action, there's no quotation marks. It's just line. And you have to kind of figure out who she's talking to by the structure of what's on the paper, because the imaginary friend is again in italic and she's talking in regular type, but you don't know who she's talking to. And through the conversation you start to figure it out, like, oh, she's making this person up. She's gone through so much in this book that this little girl has decided everybody around her is not worth talking to. Nobody is helping her. Nobody is calling her beautiful. Nobody is doing anything right. She doesn't even know that she's pregnant yet. She doesn't have any of these real thoughts, but the only thing she can do is create an imaginary figure. That's how she's going to cope through it. And you have to just figure that out by the way that Toni Morrison wrote it on the paper. She's giving you what you need to figure out what's happening. It's not necessarily like, here, let me break it down for you. There's no breaking down. You have to break it
down. And you know what I also love? Like, so I don't know why this is just a few lines right at the beginning of Winter, and it's so poetic. Like, I mean, she's poetic in general, but I think anyway, it just harkened me to my own dad. But when she says, "My daddy's face is a study," Winter moves into it and presides there. His eyes become a cliff of snow threatening to avalanche. His eyebrows bend like black limbs of leafless trees. His skin takes on the pale, cheerless yellow of winter sun. For a jaw, he has the edges of a snowbound field dotted with stubble. It's like,
Mm.
Beautiful.
I know, it's ridiculous. All you have to do is like restructure it, and it's a poem.
that's what I'm saying. So
It's
like,
crazy.
it's like you forget what you're reading. Like you get into it. Yeah. And I'm like you want to stop and write a poem like right now.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
You want to write a
Mm-hmm.
poem right now.
So her
Yeah.
influence on the canon is, ladies say, her
That's
influence,
been.
how she's shifted and changed the canon.
Yes.
Yeah, she changed the canon for sure.
Yeah.
Because like the books you read, the Ernest Hemingways, the Faulkners, they're just droning on, and people think that that's cool. I mean, it probably was before, but she took it and she was like, because she's an editor, she was a teacher, she was reading so much different stuff, so many different styles, that she could edit around people's styles and still get to the meat of what was going on.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't need these drawn on sentences. You don't need paragraphs and paragraphs of exposition. You need what happened and why.
Mhm.
And that's what she does.
Mhm.
Yeah. Come on.
Remarkable that she said she read every book in the library in the rain. Isn't that
Right. Right?
Now that is remarkable
Yes,
because
it
like
is.
I haven't even read every book in my own library.
No.
I read a lot of them, but I didn't read them all. That's for sure.
Right.
You know what? I used to feel really, really guilty because sometimes I just have 16-hour days and it's just a lot. And I used to feel really guilty. And then I read somewhere that if you can't get to read all the books that you own, it'll keep you humble because you don't know everything.
Isn't that
You know?
Exactly.
And so that just keeps me going. Like, I know that I can never get too big in an ego because there's something over there that I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
True.
And so that just fascinates me.
Mhm. Mhm. Right.
Is there anything that we're coming up onto an hour? So I just wanted to know if there's anything that you all wanted to add that we haven't touched on yet about Toni, about the movie,
Mhm.
about writing, reading.
I feel like if I start, I'll never stop.
That's valid. That's valid.
I think one of the things that is brought out in the movie is that she took exception to the well-known African American male writers,
Mm.
and with no regret, she said, "Oh no, they were responding to the white gaze,"
Mhm.
Mhm.
and so I thought that was really significant that she had the insight. I don't know about. I won't say everything is courage, but she
Yeah.
had the insight to say that, and I
Yeah.
think she speaks on the danger of traipsing around behind the narrative that's been given to you for you to prove over your life. And
Yeah.
that's great advice for me, for everybody, because it's easy to pick up on something that somebody has said to you about
Right.
you or your life or your people, or your family and people, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to prove them wrong. She didn't do that.
Mhm.
That's right.
So I just thought, I just think she's a marvelous person. I think we miss her presence and her power, but she left us with so much, as James Baldwin did. There's a resurgence in James Baldwin now. And
Yes.
Right.
we were speaking about the canon. I said, there are many people who are being now and will be influenced by the work of Toni Morrison, but also her way of doing things. So I think that we have a lot more Tonys to show up.
Absolutely. And I'll definitely say she's had a tremendous influence on my anti-racism work, like courage to say these aren't words that I'm going to lift up. This isn't I'm not going to internalize the ways that the society has taught us, the inferiority, the superiority, the underprivileged, the privileged, those sorts of things. And I feel like she did a lot of paving for me to just kind of climb on that road and follow. And for that, I give her a lot of gratitude. And, you know, I also was thinking about how we got, talking about the folks that are resurging. I'm thinking about how we got the like Baldwin film, the Basquiat film, this film, like all with like back to back.
Back to back.
And it was just like, whoa, ancestors showing up and
Yes,
showing out. And Cinema Detroit aired all of them.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I
just
know.
tremendously, you know, it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
Zoe, do you have it?
I'm trying to edit it in my head, you know.
Take us out, Zuri.
I just really want to I'm just so grateful that I had the opportunity to be a writer while Toni Morrison was alive. Like, I think that it's my greatest thing to say is that I wrote a book while she was alive. She didn't read it, it's fine, but it's like to just be in that same time frame is pretty cool. And I was thinking last night, like, if I ever had to say what Toni Morrison means to me, I think that she is the matriarch of, she is like the woman that women are. She is brilliant, she's confident, she's sexual, she's a mother, she's a maker, she's a soothsayer, she talks to ghosts. Like, you know, it's just all, it's everything that every woman has ever wanted to be, it seems like. Like, I'm just so grateful that my mom put me on, because I don't think that I would have been, I wouldn't have dove into it, because I mean, I went to college and Toni Morrison was not in any of my literary classes. One, my African American lit class, of course, but that was it. And I had already read Song of Solomon. So it wasn't like anybody was giving me like a reason to dive deep into this. And that was my mama. So I want to thank my mama for that. I want to thank my mama for Toni Morrison. Like, I just put those two in the same, they're in the same place for me.
Ashe.
Absolutely.
So let me ask everybody this then. What are you working on now? And like Janet, what's going on at Source?
Oh my goodness.
What are you doing? Zuri, when does your next issue come out?
Well, first of all, I want to say what a pleasure it is to be in a square with the, the other women. And I really appreciate the invitation to join the group and to share as best I can about Toni Morrison. Chloe was her name. And we have entered a new phase of Source Booksellers, given the impact of the stay at home, shut of the doors directive from the governor, which we have abided by. But we quickly pivoted to online sales. So it's having another kind of business going on. We've been there every single day during the last several months, my daughter and I. So it's the two of us dancing in the floor together, and that we are still working on events and being sure that we can get virtual author talks at the store. I think we have one coming up July 1st with Jennifer K. Manna. She's telling me right now the camping trip. Is that right? The camping trip. So that's going to be, and it'll be on YouTube, I guess, and Facebook and all that good stuff too. The technology is fascinating. So we've been doing that, and then we have not fully we haven't flung open the doors yet, but we are having one or two people when they ask to come and do some browsing, but we're really not back in order yet because we set up our warehouse and distribution center in the middle of the floor. Those of you who've been to the store, you know that we're little, but we have a mighty idea of doing things. And so we're emerging from that time period. We'll continue with our online sales and continue having our new releases of bestsellers. And even better still, we'll continue having what we call backlist books that have been out for a while that are pertinent to this time and subject, and trying to find, as we do, as many books that we can that we think are important to the community and important to the time period that we're experiencing. So call us up, send us an email, give us a hi on Facebook and all those other things. But we're still there.
Sounds
And you
great.
guys are on Instagram as well. So Source Booksellers.
I follow you
Instagram.
everywhere.
Ah,
Yeah. Well, Juice Malou is on its 11th issue now. And just to clarify, my magazine it's a culmination of independent artists and writers from all over the world. I get submissions from everywhere you can think of at this point. And I
Nice.
just put it all into a stapled magazine, and I distribute it across the world. So we're working on number 11. It should be out in a couple of weeks. I finished it. It should be out. And then later in the summer, I'm publishing a book for a friend of mine, a poetry book. So that'll be fun. More details to come. And, I write screenplays as well. So I've got some TV stuff in the works. I've got some movies, some films in the work. One of my films I worked on just got into the San Francisco Black Film Festival. So that was cool.
Congrats.
I'm just everywhere. I'm just doing whatever. Thank you. Yes, I work with
Yeah.
some people in Chicago. They're really great. And we hope to do more stuff. So wherever words can be written, I'm writing them, whether it's on the screenplays and books, on the wall, everywhere.
Ashe. Yeah. And over my way, I'm mostly teaching workshops these days. Mostly, as you can imagine, anti-racism workshops have picked up tremendously in the last period. I'm also finishing the expanded edition to my book, Towards Humanity, Shifting the Culture of Anti-Racism Organizing, and figuring out how the festival in Idlewild is going to pivot with everything going on with the pandemic. So a little sad that I'm probably not. I'm likely not going to gather folks Labor Day weekend. So we're figuring out what kinds of virtual events that we can do in its stead. And so those things are coming up. But pettypropolis.org, pettypropolis.org.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I enjoyed this conversation so much.
So did
Thank
I.
you.
Thank you.
thank you for
I'm really
putting it
grateful
together.
for y'all for, giving us your time, wisdom, and perspective. And thank you very much. I hope to see you at Cinema Detroit at some time in the future.
Absolutely.
And I'd also like to thank Fruit Film Festival for running the tech on this. And I think that's all. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Long live Toni Morrison.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Viva Toni.